Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, as the case may be. My name is Dr. Gaither Lowenstein. I am the Dean of Social Sciences and Arts here at College of the Desert, and this is a roundtable discussion of instructors that is geared toward helping you, the first-time Intersession teacher, learn some techniques that may be of use to you as you embark on this new journey. I'd like our participants to introduce themselves at this time.
Hi, I'm Linda Emerson, and I'm the psychology faculty here at College of the Desert. I taught Intersession last winter Intersession, and I'm here to share what I learned with you all.
And I'm Ralph Doré of the English department, and I'll be teaching again English 51, which is what I taught last January. And I'm glad to share whatever experience I had that was good.
My name is Stan Dupre. I'm on the adjunct faculty. I teach Political Science 1, which is Introduction to American Government. I taught the Intersession last year and am about to do it again, and happy to share whatever experiences I had.
My name is Terry Robinette. I'm in the psychology department. I teach general psychology. I taught it last year during the Intersession and enjoyed it quite a bit, and am signed up to do it again this year. So I have lots of information to share about it.
Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate your contribution. Let's start off talking about, based on your experience, what would you say are the characteristics of students who enroll in Intersession courses in comparison with those who typically enroll in semester-length courses? Are there some observable differences in the student population?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I would say that students who are willing to commit to sign up for Intersession are aware of the commitment it will take. And so they're motivated, they're disciplined, and they tend to be really ready to be immersed in the subject and give themselves to it.
Yes, that was my experience as well. I had a very good attendance record during the Intersession, and the test grades were so much higher, even though they were tested every single week. But the type of motivated student that you get in the Intersession is such a pleasure to work with.
That was my experience as well. I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't sure what we would get. I think I had 18 students, and I recall one of the students coming to me after one of the classes and telling me he was going to have to miss the following evening or the following morning because he had twin daughters that were being christened. And he was just embarrassed and reluctant to be absent. He may be the only absence I had in the entire Intersession. The attendance was overwhelming. The students worked hard. I think I probably had the highest average grade that I've had in any class that I've taught. And I left that Intersession thinking this might be the way to do education.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much agree with all of you. I found them more responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they appreciated. Few of them were taking more than just this course. Wow. A couple of them had, I think, maybe a physical education course or something like that. But they could pretty much devote themselves to it and to each other. That was one other thing that I noticed. They I guess they had that feeling that we're all in this together, and I think they knew they were kind of guinea pigs, and and wanted to perform well, and wanted to know each other well, and wanted to encourage each other. And I don't always find that during the semester, because sometimes students rush in from work and then they rush out. And there's a little more camaraderie, I think.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, has to do with that they're every day. You know?
Yes. I had a lot of students actually tell me that the fact that they were there every day helped with the flow of the information, so that they would go home and they would have some reading assignments and they would think about it and come back the next day with questions, and then but continuing on instead of having a day or a weekend, in between, and also taking other classes that kind of distracted them from the learning. So I would sign up for Intersessions all year round if I could, if we offered them.
Now the responses I'm hearing suggest that this is consistent with a number of studies that I've read that indicate that students in these compressed classes have higher rates of attendance, higher rates of retention, and higher rates of success. And that was certainly the case when we ran our first Intersession last year. Would you guys say that that's probably the case?
Yeah.
I agree with that. As a matter of fact, when I worked for Sun Microsystems, we implemented a similar fast-track program for educating people on being computer systems analysts. And we had such great success with that because people just liked the ability to go in and have concentrated time to get through the program. And typically, of course, these are real motivated people and people that really want to get through and get on the job and get working and get through the education.
I think that's right. I would echo what you said earlier, too. I really noticed a bond among the students, as odd as that sounds, start to develop by the end of the first week. I think they felt they were in something together, they were going to get through it together. And when you would tell them, I know, and we'll talk about this at some point, but I would remind them regularly of this is not going to be easy, or here's some of the problems we're going to have, let's talk about them. I did that regularly. And you could see them, each one felt like, yes, I know what he's talking about, we're going through this together. And I think with the typical student during the regular semester, they all have such different lives and different things they're doing. And in the intersession, they are doing that one thing together. And I think friendships were actually formed in those classes.
I know we're going to talk later about assignments. I actually created some assignments where they would work together in the very beginning that would help them start the bond. And I encouraged them to study together, and they did. So.
Yeah, it's almost like a boot camp atmosphere of, this is going to be tough, it's going to be challenging, but we're here together. And I felt a real bond with them as well because you're together so much. And
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the last night after the exam or before the exam, they either applauded or they did, not for me, of course, but sort of for each other when I congratulated them on what they had accomplished. It was like a boot camp. I've been through boot camp. And each of them looked at each other and treated each other like, I'll probably see you around campus, but we will have this one experience that at the time was unlike anything else anybody had had here. And I think they took that with them.
So it's sort of like being stationed on a submarine together or something.
You get creative. And you use that word, and I just wanted to note that back east, where I taught for many years, we had a January term until the heating oil costs went way up, and then everybody dropped them again. But those were all supposed to be innovative and creative. I taught one in literature of the city in '76. I took my kids to Philadelphia, and we took the course in the Federal District, and so on. But we were almost never taught the same thing twice, and it was supposed to be exciting for you and pull everything out of you, and they enjoyed that. But I felt some of that with this. I was teaching a course I taught before, but I felt some of that, excitement. You could try some things. They kind of thought, we're in this. We can do this, and there was a spirit, I guess, I kind of mean, that isn't always there during the semester.
True.
Well, and the students in studies of these courses have even indicated that they find the instructors to be more enthusiastic during the compressed term. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I'll tell you what I was thinking before we came here today, and the right way or the appropriate way to say it. I think teaching this intersession teaches you a lot about what kind of teacher you are. I was more enthusiastic, and I have enormous respect for the COD faculty. But if you're not enthusiastic, it's going to come out quickly.
Yeah.
You're going to be more interesting than ever, or if you're not interesting, you might be less interesting than ever if you don't prepare it the right way, because that's a long time, day after day after day.
Let's talk a little bit more specifically now about some of the teaching techniques that you all have found to be especially conducive to teaching in this compressed class format. What about that?
Go ahead, Terry.
I was just going to say that what I did, I tried really hard not to leave out anything important. As a matter of fact, I felt like I had plenty of time. As surprising as that sounds, I felt like I had plenty of time. What I did do, though, was if instead of showing a 30-minute video that I might do in a regular classroom, I would show video clips instead, very short clips. And instead of doing lengthier class exercises, which I tried to do something special every day. You know, something to break up the hours, something that would keep them engaged, something that would be fun for them to do and to participate in. But I would limit the time for that activity. And so I would, you know, prep them ahead of time, let them know what they were going to be doing so we could just kind of get to it and they could do the activity and still have time to cover the major points that I wanted to cover for the day.
I think one of the things that I did, I don't know that this is necessarily a teaching technique, but I tried the very first night to walk them through what I thought this process was going to be like. And it'll be easier this time, having done it once before, I think. But to have them understand that typically I teach a lot of 3-hour classes once a week, and to have them understand it's not going to be next week when I see you again. It's going to seem like just a little while from now because it's tomorrow. And I think also all of us in life sometimes put things off because we can do them the next day or the day after. And you can do that in an ordinary semester, I think. And I tried to explain to them how important it was to keep up. And I reminded them of that daily, because if you miss a couple of days of homework or reading assignments or projects or a couple of classes, you are considerably more behind and the attitude changes. And we would talk about that a fair amount. And I tried to keep that in mind, too, when I would give them assignments. I knew that on a typical day they might have a chapter to read for tomorrow. And generally I would say you have a chapter to read for next week. And in the regular semester I might say, read this chapter and we'll talk about it, and let's work on this project, or come back with this particular teaching American government, come back prepared to talk about abortion or the death penalty or the right to die. I tended to take some of that out during the intercession and try to realize how little time they had. You read the book, and then I will bring the discussion about those other issues rather than have them do it on their own. I think it lessened their burden to some extent.
Good idea.
English 51 is an expository writing course, and writing takes time. It takes, among other things, reflective time. And they had 24 hours like everybody else, and so truth is we had to sort of figure out ways that we could start some assignments in class. And that, if nothing else, if they could go out of a class feeling as though this is Tuesday and I've already got something started for the paper that's already due on Thursday, because the paper comes in every week, and the weeks aren't any longer. And the result was they stayed caught up. In other words, they had the work in progress. It wasn't in the semester they can put it off until the night before, and they can pull it off. I pulled it off years ago,
Sure.
But if you're going to do this in 15, 16 sessions, and they're one right after the other, there isn't that time between. I get them started on the research assignment the very first day. The last paper is a research paper, because that requirement is necessary to get an English 1A. They have to have some experience, modest experience anyway. And so we actually start on that. In the semester, we work on human rights issues. In the regular semester, I say, okay, I want you to go out and find in the newspapers and magazines, online, whatever, some human rights issues that are current, that we're disturbed about. I instead, the very first day, I know they don't have time to do that, and the writing that they've got to do that first week for the regular paper, and so I bring all kinds of clippings in, and we have about a 30-minute session in which I pass them around. I said, okay, you've got 5 minutes on this, and in 5 minutes I'll want you to turn that one to your neighbor and receive one from your neighbor and skim through that one, and they're all on different human rights concerns right now. And that works very well. And then the very next day, I show them Hotel Rwanda, which for the students who listen well and watch well, but don't read and comprehend well, was really the ticket. In other words, then they understood something about.
I'm sitting here thinking I might take your class.
I love teaching this course. I love teaching both of my courses because they always have to do with current issues.
Well, the interesting thing about this intercession time frame, you have the same number of minutes in class
Yeah.
that you have in a full-length
Right.
semester, but the rub is you don't have time between classes, and the
That's
length
it.
of the term is only 3.5 weeks. So how does that affect students' ability to complete their assignments and whatnot?
Well, first of all, one technique that I didn't get an opportunity to share is I hook them in on the first day, and I design an interactive activity where I get them to know one another. I have them actually toss a tennis ball around and learn each other's name. But I teach developmental psychology, and when we're all done tossing the ball and we test each other, so they're all engaged in that, then I analyze that, tossing the ball from different developmental levels. What would this have been like on the first day of kindergarten, elementary school, high school, and now? So I've hooked them in. I've gotten them talking. I've built something in to get them to see how it's relevant, and then I have them do a writing activity in the class reflecting on their own experience. So it's a way to show them the relevance, develop relationship, have some fun, and to shake their expectations to get them looking. So that's a technique that I use there. And as far as your other question about how do I pace it differently?
Well, the short period of time between class sessions and the fact that you've only got 3.5 weeks between the first day of class and the final, how does that affect?
Well, lots of prep. I have to do lots of prep myself, but also to give them a sense of what the expectations are. I give them very detailed study guides. I give them the exams on the Monday they come back so that they have the weekend to prepare, except for the last week. Then they have a Monday and a Thursday. I also try to watch them during the class, and I along with one break that's planned for, I very often will take 2 5-minute stretch breaks. If I feel myself fading or them fading, I'll get them to stand up, shake their arms, walk around the class, keep them in the class so I don't lose them, because then they'll come back 20 minutes later. But we do lots of movement and activity. So I think to keep their focus throughout the class, prep for it, and then the way that I weight my assignments too. Certain amount of objective testing and some home assignments that get them to reflect on the material themselves. And that's how I use that.
I get the sense that none of you go in there and lecture for 3.5 hours.
Oh, that would be definitely
Oh.
for me and
No.
for them.
You would definitely lose them.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
And I do what you said you do. I try to plan something that I believe will be of special interest to them every day. Sometimes it will be a lecture on what is love, related to mate selection in early adulthood, attachment, but I try to intersperse some of the drier pieces of developmental psychology with things that will hook them in, as well as sometimes videos, sometimes activities, lots of mixing it up. It's really important.
One thing that I found helpful, too, and it goes along in part with what you were saying earlier, I was saying don't double up on them in the sense of saying read the material, plus we have this other assignment on a matter of public interest, is I would sometimes pick one student and say I'm not going to burden all 18 or 20 of you with a double homework assignment, but we have just about enough nights here to where we can have one person per day, or 2 people as a team. This last week, this last 24 hours with Tukey Williams is the kind of thing we were doing in the regular semester class. And instead of having everybody focus on it, I would say, I know you've got your job, some of you have a wife or a husband, some of you have children. Instead of having all of you do it, one of you or 2 of you do this, and then your turn is tomorrow and your turn is next week. And you actually found that when certain things were going on that were government related or political science related, people were volunteering. Let me be that guy that night.
So you suggest a subject out of the discussion of the day, and then someone volunteers to do a bit more research and bring it back in and present it?
Yes, sometimes the subject actually is not even related to what we're talking about. I mean, there is a night, for example, in my class when we talk about the Constitution. Maybe that's the night that you might talk about abortion or gun ownership or those kinds of things. But the reality is a lot of the things that we talk about, death penalty, right to die, abortion, gay rights, those kinds of issues that come up in every political campaign. As I said to them, you don't think this is American government. Look at the paper today. There's death penalty. There's Alito which is all three branches of government. There's abortion. Those are all the things that they're talking about. So those, to answer your question, really are apart from what I consider the content of the book. So tonight we might talk about the executive branch of government and gay marriage. And tomorrow we might talk about the judicial branch of government and something unrelated to that that's still out there in the news every day. Recall petition for Governor Davis, those kinds of things that we do. I found, and I actually do this during the semester, that if it's unrelated to the chapter, particularly in the intercession, that it's almost better because it seems like a distraction. Even though they're really learning a part of American government, it seems like, okay, we're getting a break from that for a half hour.
Right. Speaking of getting a break, I keep a folder of jokes and anecdotal stories that relate to some of the things that I teach. Sometimes I'll open a lecture with a joke that's going to hook them in. Also, I have, sitting next to me on the table, I have things that I can pick up if I feel things dragging to get them laughing. And the energy goes up, and it will be related to what I'm teaching. So I have a series of clippings that I bring with me.
You guys are good.
Sounds good.
I'm learning more than I'm teaching today.
We should team teach
Exactly,
sometime.
yeah.
So to what extent do you guys involve your students in actually delivering content in a short-term course? I read about a method that one instructor uses called a jigsaw method, where they actually divide up different chapters of the material and assign them to different students who are then asked to present the material in class. Do you think something like that could have some validity in these short-term courses?
I think you have to be careful how many students you have and how prepared they would be and how conscientious. Unless you have really sharp students, it could drag. They might tune each other out. I have had them do presentations of their work. They do interviews, and they have to present the results of their interviews. But if I have more than 35 or 40 students, we run out of time.
Yeah.
Last intercession, I did end up with 32 students. We did have time to do the presentations, and it worked well. What I did is I did the first 15 minutes of every class in the last 2 weeks, or however I did it, and let them work on it.
Yeah, I use that during the regular semester, where I have a particular chapter perhaps on different types of mental illness, and then I have groups get together and learn everything that they can about that and then come in and present that portion of the chapter.
They role play the mental illness, right?
But I think during the intercession, when you have that kind of activity that takes up such a large chunk of time and it gives them more work to do at home and so forth, that I stay away from doing that during the intercession. But what I do is, like, instead of that, I'll do like a diagnostic activity and give them some scenarios, and then together as a group, they look at the diagnostic manual and they look at the symptoms and they come up with a group at what the illness might be, things like that. I also put, and I do this in the regular semester too, but the students really like it, is I put an outline up on the whiteboard when I come in for the class, because Psych 101 is typically very much a lecture type class. So I put up an outline of all the important areas that they should really focus on in the book, because the book is huge and it's got lots of information you can't possibly cover. So I put the major focus items up on the board, and then I go through those with them, and then that's what they focus on for the exams. And I think in the intercession it's really important that they have that, so they know what to really, out of a chapter that might be like 50, 60 pages, they really know what are the important areas to really focus on.
Do you find you have to leave out any content when you're teaching in this compressed format?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I really didn't. I got to everything I wanted to get to.
Yes.
I think one of the things, when I first heard that you were going to do this discussion, I wasn't sure that I could add anything, because my first reaction after the intercession was, and I was experiencing a little anxiety going into it. When it was over, there's a part of you that says, what's the big deal? It's not that
Exactly.
it's not that much more difficult, particularly if you accept the consensus, better students, better attendance. I didn't feel like we left out anything, and I think, if anything, we might have covered a little bit more.
I don't think I left out anything at all. I did do some things for them to accelerate their opportunity to, sit down and start composing, because they got to produce a paper every week. For example, in the regular semester, I will often ask them, this is, we're going to do a descriptive paper, and I want you to go out and find in magazines, opinion pages, all sorts of things that you normally might read, even though I know they don't read terribly much, but that use a great deal of description. And bring one in. I can't do that. That takes too much time. They're around there hunting, and they should be writing already. And so I find a half a dozen of those on description, a half a dozen of those on narration, and duplicate 6 copies of each one I find, and then pass them out to 36 students. And again, 5 minutes from now, move that thing that way and take this one from this guy. And so by the time we're finished with about an hour, they've had about 6 more samples in addition to the text. And so they feel they know what descriptive writing is. And then we do some in their journal before we leave that day. In other words, journaling in this course, in the Intersession, is devoted pretty much to assignments. During the regular session, most teachers in 51 use journaling as a freeing exercise to get the students to simply produce quantity, to write in their journal every day, no holds barred, anything goes. It's quantity, not quality, just to get them stop being afraid of the naked page.
Right.
But in this course, we can't afford that luxury. Whatever we write in class has to be, directed toward the next assignment, because it's coming in 24 hours or 48 hours.
Right.
I think the only thing that I really am more attentive to is, number one, on the first day, inducing commitment, and I tell them your life is mine for the next 3.5 weeks. You belong to me. And then the other thing is I really work at reading their body language. Sometimes they can go longer in a class. They could go an hour and a half. But sometimes if I notice restlessness, we'll stand up. I think it's really important. And some days just seem to be like that more than others. Because it is more of a marathon. It's like the 4 days.
It is, and I think part of what you're saying is you have to remember who's in control during the intercession, because it can get away from you. A lost hour is a lot of time. Or to allow them, as you said, to go off in a direction you don't really want to go. I might do that during the semester, but during the intercession, I always go in there with my plan for the evening, with some allowance to have a little fun, but to make sure I get through what I have to get through that night.
Yes.
There's no catching up later.
Right.
Not for us and not for
Yeah.
them. And so you really just have to stay on the ticket.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about assignments, exams, evaluating students. Does the mix of in-class versus outside-of-class assignments vary between the semester-length course and the intercession class? Do you find yourself doing more take-home stuff or of this nature, or do you do more of it in class, or is there any kind of a difference?
I give an exam every week because I typically give 4 to 5 exams every semester. So I set it up so that we cover the material Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, I'll take an hour and a half right before they leave and give them their exam that Thursday. So it's over that material. And so they get an exam every single week, but they know that. And I guess the proof in the pudding is the fact that they do so well, and it's, we may be talking about exams later, but the exams are just about the same kind of exams that I give during the regular semester.
Is that pretty much with all of you?
Yes.
It is, and on the first night, when you tell them today is Monday, our first exam is Thursday, is really the first wake-up call. You can see them say, oh, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms.
Right.
But yeah, I gave the same number of exams, I think.
Mine is mostly in writing. The exams are really I do this in the intercession. I call them interims because that's what I did. I do use quizzes quite a lot. In the regular semester, I'll use those just to make sure they're learning, works cited form, for example, bibliographic form, that sort of thing. But I actually, in the interim, I give 5 or 8 minute quizzes almost every day. They're dictated, and they're given right before a break. And right after the break, we will deal with some of the questions they had difficulty with. I'll do that especially with regard to 2 things. One is the actual instruction with regard to, let's say, a comparison contrast essay that's coming up. There's a good deal of instruction, many models in the text. I give a good deal of instruction, and I may quiz them on that the next day. And it's often 5 questions, something like that. True, false, completion. That's it. Something I can read and grade very quickly while they're on break for 5 or 6 minutes. And then we can deal with it right away. And the same might be true of grammar. On an alternate day, there's a grammar component in the course. And I'll do the same sort of thing. We'll do an activity in class, and there may be 20 items, and I say, okay, let's do every other one in class. And we go through those quickly to see whether they've absorbed and now can apply, the grammar review. And we do the other half at class, at home, and then the next day I say, okay, what problems did you have in those 10? And we just deal with the problems then. In other words, if they had trouble on number 18, okay, we'll try to go through 18. But I often put a student in charge of that. In other words, the next day.
Right.
And I did it the first day, and I was sort of the model of how we'll go through this. And I say, okay, Linda, you do it tomorrow morning with the remaining 10. You lead the class through it.
Great.
Okay. And that works very well, especially for shy students who don't think they know grammar. They often know a lot more than they think they know, but they never had to tell anybody about it out loud. And it gives them some confidence, I think.
With the exams, I have the same number of exams for intersession that I do for the regular sessions, but I give myself the space to make the 3rd exam take home. I don't tell them that, but if I feel like I want to use more lecture time, I might shift at the end of the 2nd week and make the 3rd exam a take home. That way I can talk a little bit more, because usually the day of the exam you lose them. If they know there's an exam, they're zoning out.
Right.
So I give myself that option with the exams.
Do you give them, in the take-home exams, is it pretty much essay or writing assignments, or still multiple choice? Or
Still multiple
and
choice.
true, false?
I
And
have
true,
I have writing assignments, though. The way I weight my syllabus, I have writing assignments and exams. Very interesting. No difference in grades between the take-home and the in-class.
Now, in light of the shorter time frame of the intersession, do you think there's any benefit to be derived from contacting the students prior to the start of the term and giving them a reading assignment so they can come in, hit the ground running? What do you think about something like that?
That's a subject near and dear to my heart.
Mine too.
Every semester when we start, and I don't think it really is any different, but it might be more important in the intersession. My doctorate degree, I went to law school, and after I graduated from college, I got a letter from the law school that I went to saying, here are your assignments for the first day, once I had paid the deposit, which I thought was a little odd. I was still celebrating not having to be in school. And while it only took a week or so to do it, I spent the whole summer thinking, with the usual, that weighing on my mind, when am I going to get that done? But when I went to class, and I don't know if other graduate schools are the same way, the first day, we just launched right into it. And my first day every semester, particularly since I often teach the 3-hour class, I get there thinking, I wish they just were somehow better prepared. I've gone over the syllabus, and I've gone over the other things that they need to know about the class and by the textbook, but I wish that they had done a little reading so I could launch into it. I can still lecture without them having read it, but if you can get the nods and the questions and the understanding, I would love that. During the intersession, it might be even more important. If we could do that, I would do it.
I think it's a dream, unfortunately.
I understand that.
There's only about 2 weeks between the end of the fall semester and the beginning of the intersession, and so it would help mostly those who didn't go to the fall session. But I had a program like that at Middlebury College in graduate school many, many years ago, in which they took only 175 students each summer, and the graduate program was only in the summer, and they sent you your reading list 8 months before. They admitted you in August for the following June and they sent you reading lists, and they expected you to have everything read. I took 3 fiction courses one summer, and so I was very grateful for that reading list.
I think it's a great idea. I hadn't really thought about it. I think it could be establishing a really helpful precedent for them to have read the first chapter before they come to the lecture, which gets them in that habit. I don't know how it would work for math students who have math anxiety, but courses where there's a reading component, maybe we could post something on the internet.
I think there's an experiment here for our fearless leader.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. If you
Yeah,
could
I do
obtain
too.
the rosters and maybe email addresses of your teacher, of your students prior to the start of the class.
And then we'd have to email them.
Zoids.
But it might be fun.
I do a lot of that.
Yeah, take
I
one
email
class
Yeah,
and
but I have
almost use it
I
as
have
a survey.
60 students in my classes usually. 55, 60 students.
Well, it's something that's worth thinking about, because I think if any way you could give these students a head start, particularly in these short-term classes,
Intercession.
it might make for that first session. I used to just burn off the first session when I would teach,
Right.
because the students basically come there unprepared. You throw out the syllabus, you know, and you're out of there in a half hour, and you can't really afford to waste that type of time, in an intercession.
I do an interactive that affords me a quick intro, again with the tennis balls and the lecture and bringing them in, but I wonder if there's not a way that we couldn't have the media, when they register, there would be like a little page that would click and say, this is your first assignment.
Sure.
So we wouldn't have to send them an
Or
email.
maybe at the bookstore when they come to pick up the book.
Yeah.
A little calling
Just to
card from the
read
instructor.
chapter 1.
Right.
That's all.
I think it's doable.
Or what about this? I know I was looking at the roster earlier in the week, which is not complete yet, but often they list their email addresses. Is there maybe I'm asking permission here, just my own little unscientific survey here, to just email 20 of them or 10 of them and say, here's the name of the book, the author, you can get it at the bookstore, please read chapter 1 before the first night.
My only concern about email is that some students don't check their email, and I think that we'd have to have a
Right.
way to hook it to their registration. And since a lot of them are registered, it might be harder, but I could still see posting it, trying the email, and maybe putting it with the purchase of the textbook, but we'd have to be careful not to have them be penalized because it's so new.
Well,
They
you know,
might
the
not.
Right.
emails that are listed on those pages are not always accurate, because
No,
I've
they're
tried
not.
to email students before, and what I was told is that the school assigns them one if they don't have one. The school assigns them one that they may never check.
That's that CCC apply.
They may
Yeah.
not know they have
Is
one.
that it?
But as the technology becomes more advanced and it becomes more routine for students to register electronically, who knows? That
Well,
might
you
be
could
something
even
that
set
be
up
doable.
if somebody could set up groups like Robinette's Psych group, and then I'd have to just send an email out to everybody in that group and just put that group name in. That would be great.
Well, I know they do that for online classes, so at many
Yeah.
institutions. So we're not far from being able to implement something.
But at least for next intercession, if we could link it to the registration process when they sign up, if they would get some kind of a
Yeah.
pointer there.
I use email a lot.
Yeah.
I taught for 40 years on a residential college campus, and I was used to being able to call you at 10 o'clock at night. I've got 30 minutes, we can work on that. And I can't do that here. They all live someplace else. And so I tell them from the very beginning, I will email you if you miss this class. And I do. Every single night I go home and simply write you and say, Terry, we missed you tonight.
Good for
And
you.
Do you
it
think that
helps.
helps with the
It helps.
attendance?
It does
It's
help.
the connection that it
Uh-huh.
helps establish.
It does. First day of class, I'm troubled too by those who don't have an operative email. But the very first day of class, I give them a writing assignment about themselves. It's really a diagnostic. All English teachers do that. But while they're doing that, I go around and with the roster in hand, and I point to that email. And I say, is this the correct phone number? Is this the correct email address? And they confirm that. And often they'll say, oh, no, I have a different email address. And they'll write it in. And then I'll say to them, do you use it? Do you check it? Because in this course, you must check it. And so what I often do then, if they miss something, if you missed today, this morning, I'll simply say, if there was anything that was really critical for next time, I'll tell you what that is. But I'll say in the meantime, get a buddy in class so you can call. and find out from somebody else and not from me,
Right.
because I don't want that burden, really. And I want them to take responsibility for having missed a class.
Right, right. That's what I do is in the very first day, I have them get into pairs and interview each other, and then they introduce
I do
one
that,
another in
That's
class.
nice.
And I tell them, that person, have somebody in class be your buddy. That if you miss a class or you have something you need, that this person well enough to say, would you take notes from me? Or
I do that also.
Pick up the handouts, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Now, as far as grading these students, given the sort of interactive nature of these shorter-term courses, do any of you give points or a percentage of the grade for class participation
Yes.
or even for attendance?
I give attendance points and participation points.
More so than in a full-length term class?
No, it's the same. I bake in attendance points and participation points into their grade, and if they miss, one class, then they get this many points. If they attend all classes, they get more points, and so forth. And if they participate in the group activities and raise their hand on occasion, and act like they're, not
Engaged.
sleeping in the back row all the time, then they get points for that as well.
The rest of you do that?
I actually take away points for missed attendance. They get one miss for intercession. They do get one miss. After that, they lose points. And as far as activities, I have 4 in-class activities. I generally plan for 1 a week, and that's part of their assessment. And it's usually writing a reaction to something we've done in class, that looking at their own identity in elementary school or attachment, and they do that. And I tell them in the syllabus that there will be 4 in-class activities. Only 1 will be announced. The others are at the instructor's discretion, and that they won't have an opportunity to make it up. So I weave in the points that way. But I make the activities fun as related to what we're talking about.
I kind of do a combination of the two of those, and I do what Linda does as well. I know this is about the intercession, but I just am a stickler about attendance anyway, and tardiness.
yeah.
I let them know the first night. A minute late is an absence, and that's just it. I call the roll at different times, and then, of course, particularly, again, during the intercession, you'll see them when it gets close to break time, aren't you taking roll? And I'm saying, no, tonight I'm going to do it just before the class ends.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But and I stagger it. Sometimes I do it right in the middle, sometimes the beginning, sometimes the end. But I do that, I really focus on that in the intercession, because I think, A, it's easier for them to just say, I'm going to take one night off. And B, I think it's easier for them to then do a second or a third night and for you to get lost once you get behind. And so I talk to them about attendance regularly.
I love the idea of taking it at different times. That's a great little tip.
Randomized roll call.
Yeah.
And then the ones that show up that you think never come or the day, then they keep saying, when's the roll call at the end of the class? So I say, just one of those days I'm not taking roll.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, one of the things I do is after break or right towards the end of class, I'll send around an attendance sheet that they have to sign in during the last portion of the class, so I know if anyone jumped ship, at
Okay.
break time. So they know that that's going to happen, but they don't know when after the break. It could be right after the break or right before class ends or something, but I'll just have something ready and just hand it out and send it around the room. And that way I can then go back and say, okay, these people disappeared sometime through the course.
I found the techniques that I use are, number 1, telling them that they're mine, and then doing the role and having the interwoven activities. They're very responsible. And I do tell them, if something's coming up and you know it's coming up, talk to me, I'll work with you on
Yeah,
it.
right, I do too.
Right.
But I still stress how detrimental it will be, but I'm willing to work with them if they communicate with me up front.
Another tool that I found useful, and we all try to do this during the semester, is getting to know the students' names. I try to do that, and I think this may be one piece of advice, good advice for the people who haven't done it before. I try to get as many names as I can the first night of the intersession and start doing that exercise for myself so that they know. I know who you are. I know if you're not here, so that when they come in late, I can say, Linda,
Why are you picking me to say that?
But I think that's really important, I think, is to stress the attendance and the on-timeness the very first night.
Although I have to say, during the intersession, I really didn't have near as many problems as I have during the normal semester.
Yeah, neither did I.
Well, folks, believe it or not, we're just about out of time. This was a very lively discussion.
We like teaching the interest.
Obviously,
Yes,
yeah, it's obvious.
yes.
There's a lot of enthusiasm for this teaching format and for, I think, teaching in general among you four. Do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to offer our first-time intercession instructors?
No, I would just say it's not as different and as difficult as you think it is. Just prepare the way you normally prepare, and I think you'll find it to be such a positive experience. You'll be doing what I did, which is immediately calling the department ahead and saying, I want to do this again next year.
Yeah, I did too. And if we make too good a video here, we're going to all lose our jobs. There'll be such competition.
That's true.
I don't think. One thing I found is that teaching the intercession last January, and then again having to teach that very same course in the summer session, made me a more efficient summer school teacher. I used time better, and I learned the use of that time to use it better in that compressed 4-week session. And that may be something that some of our colleagues who don't think they want to teach the intercession should think about. You know, it does make you. I thought I
think
gained some
so, too.
efficiencies. I really did. You know.
Yeah. I've taught different formats. Summer school has been different formats. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's 2 months, you know, whatever they decide to do for the summer. So I'd had some experience with condensing things by teaching a summer school course that was a month long. But I too believe that it's very similar to what I usually do. I put extra effort, though, into breaking up the hours that they're there sitting, you know, so that we take frequent short breaks. I make sure that we have something special to do every day, and I make sure the outline's up on the board, and I really urge them strongly to make sure that they've read the chapter that we're going to talk about the night before, which happens. If I try to do that during the regular semester, you don't get, you know, anybody, you know, there may be a couple people that will come in having read the chapter, but during the intersession they really do it, and they come in, and it really kind of speeds up the process of, because you can get to more discussions sooner. Because they've already read and they know what you're talking about.
I do all of that too, and the only other thing I would add is I do this in my regular session, but I vary my assessments. I have 500 points for each course, 360 points are exams, 30 points are journals, but they're directed journals. I give them sheets with lists of questions as related to the chapters. They pick one, and then they do a project, so that those students who maybe have some test anxiety can perform in other ways. And then I'm also very careful to prep them for the exams, so they have a sense of control. They know what I want them to know. So, and in my exams, I'll generally have several questions that I might not have lectured on, but they're in the book. Most of them are things that I've talked about, but a few little pieces so that they have to be in the book as well.
Well, I want to thank you all for participating, particularly since this is finals week. You are not being paid.
We're not.
We're not?
You are truly dedicated to your profession. Thank you
Intrinsic
for it.
reward.
That's right, intrinsic rewards only. And I'd like to thank those of you who are watching and wish you the best as you embark on this exciting new venture. Thank you.
Yes.